Young people today are being told the president is the enemy. There are people in this country who are applauding this individual, and that is a really very disturbing element to all of this. The sooner the people on the left who have called the president every name in the book, from Hitler to a Nazi to a traitor, what do you expect people to react? How do you expect them to react?
You know, it's only been 9 days. U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., Jeanine Pirro there on what may have fueled the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Again, it's only been a few days. It feels like yesterday for those of us who were there. It was the third assassination attempt on President Trump. But many on the political left are now doubling down on the dangerous rhetoric. Some are actually blaming the president himself.
Get lost, clean up your own house before you have anything to say to us about the language that we use.
Chaos follows him, and you are less safe, right? If you decide to go into his orbit, you have become less safe. He does not care about your safety. He's not going to protect you.
At what point do people simply say, hey, Trump, it's clear that you're the drama?
There's tremendous, as you can understand, concern given the threat levels that are going up in part because of the president and now 3 assassination attempts on him, his very low approval ratings, which unfortunately fuel a lot of disaffection.
What kaleidoscope are they looking through that they see a different reality than those of us who were actually there? And maybe some of them were, but I mean, Representative Hakeem Jeffries is just off the charts with what he says. Ben Ferguson, podcast host. What are they looking at?
Yeah, it's victim shaming 101. This is no different than if someone's raped and you say, well, she was dressed scandalous for the club, so she kind of deserved it. That's what they're doing here. And then when they say Donald Trump doesn't care about you and he's going to put your life in danger if you're in his orbit, Donald Trump's not trying to kill anybody. Donald Trump's not shooting at anybody. Donald Trump isn't telling people to shoot at him. Donald Trump is trying to calm it down while the left keeps ratcheting it up. And this goes back to what you and I talked about days after. The Democratic Party refuses to understand that their words of calling this president a Nazi, Hitler, a dictator, a tyrant, it goes on and on, the number of names they keep using against him, is inspiring people to try to kill the president of the United States of America. And when they're called out on it, they double down on it because their intent is clear, Harris. We don't need to sugarcoat it. I say it again. This is a president that the Democratic Party will never stop going after because they want someone to kill him. They can't stand him, they hate him, and they will never tone it down because they want him dead. That's the facts of this Democratic Party. Hakeem Jeffries is proof of that.
You know, when they're talking like that, though, we do know at the same time, some of them were in the room. So when they say in his orbit, they were in his orbit. What are they even talking about?
Yeah.
As journalists, it's our job to be there. It's the Correspondents' Dinner.
Yeah. Well, this goes back to isolation, right? What they really want to do is they want Donald Trump to be able to go nowhere in society where it is acceptable. And when you victim shame and you say, when you're, as Chuck Todd did, right, a non-biased journalist for years, you know how biased he is now. Look at his comments. That's what we've been saying for so long about the liberal media. What Chuck Todd is saying is Donald Trump, the president of the United States of America, should not be allowed out in public anywhere. Donald Trump should stay in the White House, never leave, never do anything, because everywhere he goes, he is somehow a threat to society. This is that mental mind game that they try to play with the American people, that you should be ashamed of this president, that this president's evil, that he's a dictator, a tyrant, Adolf Hitler. That goes back to the core of what they've been doing since the very beginning. Donald Trump should be able to go wherever he wants to go. He doesn't put anybody's life at risk when he's there. It's the crazy liberal leftists that keep saying these things and inspire people to keep trying to kill him. That's who should be blamed here, but they're never going to stop.
All right, let's move to this dramatic video showing hundreds of anti-immigration and customs enforcement protesters, ICE protesters, battling police outside a New York City hospital over the weekend. It began when ICE agents brought an illegal alien they'd arrested for medical care, Police say the mob blocked the emergency entrances and exits, putting patients in danger. Watch this. You can see agitators throwing trash cans, large ones, and shouting at the police. Police arrested 9 people there, and DHS has said this during the arrest. The illegal alien refused to comply with officers' lawful commands and weaponized his vehicle against them. They also say he tried to punch and elbow those officers, and we're told that illegal immigrant has a criminal history with charges for assault, drug possession. And the city's socialist mayor, Zoran Mamdani, is standing by his sanctuary policies.
I've made very clear that our laws leave no room for interpretation about the fact that our NYPD will not participate in civil immigration enforcement. And I've also been very clear about my views on ICE raids as a whole. I think that they are cruel. I think that they are inhumane. I've seen some of the videos from the incident. That is incredibly disturbing.
When it comes to illegal immigrant crime, here's what's really disturbing. Police say an illegal from El Salvador butchered 2 women, including a mom of 3, then called the cops to confess it. And it happened not far from New York City just late last week. Ben.
This is what happens when the rule of law becomes optional. Chaos ensues. And when you have a Democratic Party that says you can pick and choose what laws you want to abide by, and also what law enforcement officers you think are good and or bad, you get this type of chaos that fills the void. The NYPD has to deal with this. ICE has to deal with this. But the Democratic Party has also been clear. Defund the police, defund ICE. We don't want law and order. We put illegal immigrants with criminal histories ahead of the American people that they are victimizing. And then they put everyone else's life at risk, including innocent people that needed to go to a hospital. This is the ER entrance. They shut it down because they didn't think they'd be held accountable or arrested for blocking an entrance to a hospital. In what world do we live in where that is acceptable behavior? Well, I can tell you where. In New York City, where communists are in charge.
Well, look, it's not over yet. They arrested them, but the courts, the soft on crime courts here in New York City, we don't know how that story is going to end. Usually ends better for the criminal than the victim. Ben, thank you very much. Good to see you. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.